Maya Chen stood in the checkout line at the grocery store, her worn sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as she counted the crumpled bills in her wallet for the third time. $23.47. Enough for rice, beans, and maybe some discount vegetables if she was lucky. The woman behind her in line huffed loudly, tapping her manicured nails against her designer purse. Maya glanced back apologetically and moved forward slightly, even though the cashier was still scanning items for the customer ahead. Some people have no business shopping here, the woman muttered to her friend, not bothering to lower her voice. Look at her clothes. Probably using food stamps. Maya's jaw tightened, but she kept her eyes forward. She had learned long ago that responding to such comments only made things worse. Her faded jeans and oversized hoodie told a story that people like this woman would never understand. The hoodie hid the scars on her arms, the ones that mapped out a different kind of story entirely. The cashier, a teenager with kind eyes, smiled at Maya when her turn came. Find everything okay today? Yes, thank you. Maya's voice was soft but steady as she placed her items on the conveyor belt. Rice, black beans, a bag of carrots, some pasta, and a loaf of day-old bread from the discount rack. Behind her, the woman continued her commentary. Probably unemployed too. These people just drain the system. Maya's hands remained steady as she handed over her cash, though every muscle in her body had gone tense. The cashier noticed the woman's behavior and rolled her eyes sympathetically at Maya. Your change is $2.53, the cashier said, deliberately speaking loudly enough for the rude woman to hear. Thank you for your service, by the way. The woman behind them fell silent. Maya nodded gratefully at the cashier, who had somehow recognized what others missed entirely. Maybe it was the way Maya carried herself, or the alertness in her eyes that never quite went away. As Maya walked toward the exit, she heard the woman resume her conversation in confused whispers. Service? What did she mean by that? Outside the store, the autumn wind cut through Maya's thin jacket. She had 3 miles to walk home to her studio apartment, the one she could barely afford even with her disability payments. The neighborhood wasn't the best, but it was what she could manage while she tried to piece her life back together. 2 blocks from the store, Maya noticed them following her. 3 young men in hoodies, keeping a distance but matching her pace. Her training kicked in automatically, heightening her awareness of every sound, every shadow, every possible escape route. She had hoped to avoid this kind of situation, but living where she did made it almost inevitable. She turned down a side street, testing whether they would follow. They did. Maya's breathing remained controlled, but her mind was already calculating distances and assessing threats. The men were probably in their early 20s, and they moved with the swagger of people who thought they owned these streets. Hey, lady, one of them called out when they got closer. Hold up a minute. Maya kept walking, her pace steady. She had learned in the military that showing fear often escalated dangerous situations. But she also knew when confrontation was unavoidable. I said stop, the leader said more aggressively, jogging to catch up. You deaf or something? They surrounded her near an alley between 2 abandoned buildings. Maya set her grocery bag down carefully, her movements deliberate and calm. To them, she probably looked like an easy target. A small Asian woman alone, carrying food that suggested she didn't have much money. Look, we're not gonna hurt you, the leader said with a grin that suggested otherwise. We just need whatever cash you got left. And maybe that phone in your pocket. Maya's phone was a basic model she had bought secondhand, worth maybe $30. But it was her only connection to the outside world, her only way to contact the VA counselor who was helping her navigate civilian life. I don't want any trouble, Maya said quietly. Her voice carried no fear, only a strange kind of sadness. No trouble at all, another one laughed. Just hand over the money and phone, and we'll be on our way. Maya looked at each of them in turn. They were so young, probably not much older than some of the new recruits she had trained overseas. Kids who thought they were tough because they had never faced real danger, real consequences. Please, she said simply. Just let me go home. The leader stepped closer, apparently interpreting her calm demeanor as weakness. Lady, you're not hearing me. Give us what you got, or things are gonna get ugly. Maya closed her eyes for a moment, feeling something shift inside her chest. She had tried so hard to leave that other person behind, the one who could move through darkness like a ghost and neutralize threats before they knew what hit them. She had wanted to be normal, to be the kind of person who could buy groceries and walk home without having to think about combat tactics and threat assessment. But these three young men had made that impossible. When Maya opened her eyes again, something had changed. The scared, struggling veteran was still there, but underneath it was something else. Something that had been forged in places where weakness meant death and hesitation could cost not just your own life, but the lives of your teammates. Last chance, the leader said, pulling something from his pocket. A knife, small but sharp enough to be dangerous in the hands of someone desperate or stupid enough to use it. Maya's training took over completely then. Her body moved before her conscious mind had fully processed the threat. In one fluid motion, she stepped inside the leader's reach, trapped his knife hand, and swept his legs out from under him. He hit the pavement hard, the knife skittering away across the concrete. The other two froze for a moment, shocked by how quickly their leader had gone down. Maya used that hesitation to her advantage, moving with a speed and precision that spoke of countless hours of training and real-world application. The second attacker swung a wild punch that Maya deflected easily, using his momentum to throw him into the brick wall beside them. The third one was smarter, or maybe just more scared. He turned to run, but Maya was already moving, cutting off his escape route with an economy of motion that made it look effortless. Within 30 seconds, all three would-be muggers were on the ground. Two were unconscious, and the leader was groaning and holding his probably broken wrist. Maya stood over them, breathing normally, not even winded. For a moment, the old Maya was fully present. The Navy SEAL who had completed missions that remained classified, who had earned decorations she couldn't talk about, who had saved lives in ways that would never make the news. That version of herself felt familiar and foreign at the same time. Then, reality crashed back in. Maya looked around quickly, checking for witnesses or police. The last thing she needed was to be arrested for assault, even if it had been self-defense. Her record was clean, but explaining her background to local cops would raise questions she wasn't ready to answer. The leader was trying to sit up, his face pale with shock and pain. "What the hell?" he gasped. "Who are you?" Maya picked up her groceries, checking that nothing had fallen out of the bag. "Someone who just wants to go home," she said quietly. She walked away without looking back, leaving the three men to figure out how to explain their injuries to each other. As she turned the corner, Maya could hear one of them saying in a shaky voice, "Dude, that was not normal. That was like military stuff." The walk home took on a different quality after that. Maya found herself scanning rooftops and doorways again, falling back into patterns of movement and awareness that she had tried so hard to unlearn. The civilian clothes and quiet demeanor were just camouflage now, a way to blend in while the real Maya Chen operated underneath. She thought about the cashier's comment, the casual recognition of her service that the rude customer had missed entirely. Most people saw what they expected to see, the small, quiet woman who shopped for bargains and walked instead of driving. They saw someone to be dismissed or, in the case of those three young men, someone to be victimized. They had no idea who they were really looking at. Maya's apartment building came into view, a tired-looking structure with peeling paint and broken windows in the upper floors. Home, such as it was. As she climbed the stairs to the third floor, Maya could hear Mrs. Rodriguez's television through the thin walls, and smell the cooking from the Filipino family down the hall. Her studio apartment was sparse but clean. A mattress on the floor, a small table and chair, a hot plate and mini-fridge that served as her kitchen. On the wall hung a single frame, containing her discharge papers and a photo of her SEAL team from her last deployment. 8 faces looking back at the camera, all of them carrying the quiet confidence that came from knowing they were among the best at what they did. 5 of those faces would never age beyond what was captured in that photograph. Maya sat on her mattress and opened the bag of rice, measuring out enough for dinner. The routine was comforting: wash the rice, add water, wait for it to cook. Simple tasks that didn't require split-second decisions or life and death consequences. But, as she ate her plain rice and beans, Maya couldn't stop thinking about the look in those young men's eyes when they realized they had badly miscalculated. The shock and confusion when their easy target turned out to be something else entirely. She had tried so hard to be invisible, to fade into the background of civilian life. The VA counselors said it was common for veterans, especially those coming back from special operations. The desire to disappear, to not be seen or noticed or asked questions about where you've been and what you've done. Maya woke before dawn, as she had every day for the past 15 years. Her internal clock didn't recognize weekends or holidays, only the steady rhythm of reveille that had been programmed into her bones during basic training. The difference was that now she woke to silence instead of the controlled chaos of a military base. She made coffee with her single-cup maker and sat at her small table, watching the sun rise over the city skyline. In 6 hours, she had a job interview at a security company downtown. The position was basic, night shift security guard at an office building, but it was a start. Something to build on while she figured out how to translate 8 years of special operations experience into civilian-friendly terms. The interview clothes she had bought at a thrift shop hung on the back of her only chair. A black blazer that was slightly too big, grey slacks that she had hemmed herself, and flats that pinched her feet but looked professional enough. Maya had studied herself in the store mirror, trying to see what potential employers would see. A small Asian woman in her 30s, quiet and unremarkable. Nothing that would suggest she could clear a building full of hostiles or swim 5 miles in open ocean with 60 pounds of gear. Which was exactly what she needed them to see. Maya spent the morning preparing, reviewing common interview questions and practicing answers that revealed nothing important. Yes, she had military experience. No, she couldn't discuss the specifics due to classification levels. Yes, she was comfortable working nights and weekends. No, she had no criminal record or substance abuse issues. The truth was infinitely more complex, but civilian HR departments weren't equipped to handle the real truth. At noon, Maya took the bus downtown. The security company's offices were in a decent part of the city, the kind of place where business people grabbed quick lunches and checked their phones while walking. Maya fit in well enough among the crowd, just another person heading to just another appointment. The building directory listed Titan Security Solutions on the 4th floor. As Maya rode the elevator up, she practiced her breathing exercises, the same ones that had kept her calm during missions where failure meant not coming home. A job interview wasn't life or death, but for someone trying to rebuild their entire existence from scratch, it felt close enough. The receptionist was friendly, offering Maya a bottle of water while she waited. The lobby was decorated with photos of the company's various security contracts, office buildings, shopping malls, corporate events. Safe, predictable work that required vigilance but not the kind of split-second life-or-death decisions Maya was used to making. Maya Chen? A tall man in his 50s emerged from an office, extending his hand. I'm Tom Morrison, Operations Manager. Thanks for coming in. Morrison's handshake was firm but not aggressive. His eyes were sharp, the kind that missed very little. Maya recognized the look of someone who had been in law enforcement or military himself, though probably not at her level. His office was neat and professional, with certificates on the wall and a photo of Morrison in what looked like a police uniform from 20 years ago. Maya sat in the chair across from his desk, maintaining good posture while trying not to look too rigid. So, Morrison said, opening a manila folder, your resume is interesting. 8 years Navy, honorable discharge, excellent references from your commanding officers. But there are some gaps. Maya had expected this question. Much of my service record is classified. I can provide general information about my ratings and deployments, but specific details would require security clearance to discuss. Morrison nodded slowly. I've seen that before. Usually means special operations of some kind. Maya didn't confirm or deny, keeping her expression neutral. Let him draw his own conclusions. The position we're looking to fill is pretty straightforward, Morrison continued. Night security at the Meridian office complex. Mostly just keeping an eye on things, checking badges, making rounds. Not exactly high-speed, low-drag stuff. The military terminology wasn't lost on Maya. Morrison was definitely former military, probably testing to see how she would react to the reference. I'm looking for steady work, Maya said simply. Something where I can use my training but also transition to civilian life. Fair enough. Can you handle working alone? Night shift can get pretty lonely, and some of our guards wash out because they can't deal with the isolation. Maya almost smiled at that. She had spent weeks at a time in hostile territory with no backup except her team, operating in complete radio silence. A quiet office building at night sounded like luxury. Solitude doesn't bother me, she said. I'm comfortable with independent work and long shifts. Morrison asked a few more routine questions about availability and references, then leaned back in his chair. I'm going to be straight with you, Maya. Your military background is impressive, but I've hired a lot of veterans over the years. Some adjust well to civilian security work, and some don't. Some miss the adrenaline and end up creating problems where none exist. Others go the opposite direction and check out completely. Maya met his gaze steadily. What do you need to know? I need to know that you can handle boring. That you can sit in a lobby for 8 hours and stay alert without needing constant stimulation. And I need to know that if something does happen, you won't overreact. The question revealed more about Morrison's previous experiences than he probably intended. Maya could imagine the type of veteran he was thinking about, the ones who struggled with the transition from high-stakes military operations to the mundane realities of civilian security work. I understand the difference between a military threat and a civilian security situation, Maya said. I'm not looking for combat. I'm looking for employment. Morrison studied her for a long moment. Your references are outstanding. Your CO described you as the most professional and competent soldier he's ever worked with. That's not language he used lightly. Maya waited, letting the silence stretch. She had learned long ago that sometimes the best response was no response at all. I'm going to offer you the position, Morrison said finally. 12-hour shifts, Wednesday through Friday, plus every other weekend. Starting pay is $18 an hour, with health benefits after 90 days. You'll need to complete our training program, which is mostly about company policies and procedures. $18 an hour wasn't much, but it was more than Maya was currently making, which was nothing. And health benefits meant she could eventually reduce her dependence on VA medical services, which were overwhelmed and underfunded. I accept, Maya said. When do I start? Training begins Monday morning. I'll have Sarah give you the paperwork and schedule. Morrison stood up, extending his hand again. Welcome to Titan Security. As Maya filled out forms and emergency contact information, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months, hope. It was a small job with basic responsibilities, but it was a foothold in civilian life. A place to start rebuilding. The bus ride home took her through neighborhoods that told the story of urban economic inequality. Gleaming office towers gave way to struggling retail districts, which eventually faded into the kind of area where Maya lived. Places where people worked multiple jobs just to afford rent, where grocery shopping meant choosing between quality and quantity. Maya's phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number, probably spam, but she checked it anyway. Got your number from Marcus. Heard you handled some business yesterday. We should talk. Maya stared at the message, her good mood evaporating. Marcus was one of the 3 men she had encountered outside the grocery store. Apparently word was spreading about what had happened. She deleted the message without responding and made a mental note to be extra careful walking home for the next few days. The last thing she needed was to get pulled into neighborhood politics or gang dynamics. All she wanted was to work her security job, save some money, and figure out how to build a normal life. But as Maya walked from the bus stop to her apartment, she couldn't shake the feeling that normal might be harder to achieve than she had hoped. The skills that had kept her alive overseas weren't things she could just turn off when convenient. They were part of who she was, woven into the fabric of her instincts and reactions. And, in a neighborhood where weakness was often seen as invitation, those skills might be impossible to hide forever. Maya stopped at the corner store to buy milk, nodding politely to Mrs. Kim behind the counter. The elderly Korean woman always smiled at Maya and sometimes slipped an extra apple or orange into her bag without charging for it. Small kindnesses that reminded Maya why she had chosen to serve her country in the first place. "You look happy today," Mrs. Kim observed in accented English. "Something good happen?" "Got a job," Maya said simply. Mrs. Kim's face lit up. "Ah, very good. What kind of job?" "Security work." "Nothing exciting, but it's steady." "Steady is good," Mrs. Kim nodded sagely. "Exciting is overrated." If only she knew, Maya thought as she paid for her milk. Mrs. Kim probably assumed Maya had lived a quiet, unremarkable life before moving to the neighborhood. Most people made that assumption, and Maya was happy to let them. Back in her apartment, Maya hung up her interview clothes and changed into jeans and a t-shirt. She had the weekend to prepare for Monday's training, which meant figuring out how to present herself as competent but not intimidating, experienced but not overqualified. It was a delicate balance that many veterans struggled with. Too much military bearing made civilian employers nervous. Too little made them question your competence. Maya had watched other veterans struggle with this transition, some never quite finding the right balance. But Maya had advantages that most other veterans didn't have. Years of operating under deep cover had taught her how to become whoever she needed to be, how to blend into any environment while maintaining her core identity underneath the surface. She looked at the photo on her wall again, at the faces of her teammates who would never have to worry about job interviews or civilian life. Sometimes Maya envied them the simplicity of their ending, even as she missed them terribly. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. "We know where you live." Maya turned off her phone and placed it face down on the table. She had tried to avoid this kind of situation, but it seemed unavoidable. The skills that had saved her life yesterday were now attracting exactly the kind of attention she had hoped to avoid. She made dinner and ate in silence, planning contingencies. If the situation Maya's first week at Titan Security passed without incident. The Meridian office complex was exactly as Morrison had described, quiet, predictable, and perfectly suited to someone who needed to disappear into routine work. The building housed accounting firms, insurance companies, and consulting groups. People who worked normal hours and went home to normal lives. During her shifts, Maya walked predetermined routes through 42 floors of offices, checked badge access logs, and monitored security cameras. The most exciting event had been a medical emergency on the 23rd floor when an accountant had a panic attack during tax season. Maya had called paramedics and stayed with the woman until help arrived, using the calm presence and first aid training that came naturally after years of dealing with much more serious medical situations. The night security position suited Maya perfectly. She could work alone without having to navigate complex social dynamics or explain her background to curious co-workers. The building's tenants rarely interacted with security beyond a polite nod, and Maya preferred it that way. But the anonymous text messages hadn't stopped. Each day brought new messages from different numbers, all carrying variations of the same threat. They knew where she worked now. They knew her schedule. They wanted to meet and discuss business opportunities that would be mutually beneficial. Maya recognized the pattern. Someone was trying to recruit her, probably for private security work that operated in legal gray areas. Her encounter with the three would-be muggers had demonstrated skills that certain people found valuable. Skills that commanded premium prices in the right markets. On Friday night, as Maya completed her final rounds of the week, she made a decision. She couldn't keep ignoring the situation, hoping it would resolve itself. Experience had taught her that problems like this rarely disappeared without direct action. The messages had started including specific details that proved whoever was behind them had done their homework. They knew about her Navy service, though not the specifics. They knew she lived alone and had limited financial resources. They knew she was trying to rebuild her life through legitimate employment. Maya finished her shift at 6 in the morning and took the bus home through the early morning rush hour. Office workers heading to jobs like the ones she had spent all night protecting, people whose biggest security concern was whether their parking meter had expired. Her apartment building looked different in the daylight, more rundown and desperate than it did at night. Maya climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, noting automatically that the light in the hallway had burned out again. In her old life, details like that had been the difference between successful missions and disasters. She was fishing for her keys when the door at the end of the hall opened. A man stepped out, mid-40s, with the kind of build that spoke of serious gym time and possibly military or law enforcement background. He wasn't one of her neighbors. "Ms. Chen," he said, approaching with his hands visible and non-threatening. "My name is David Reeves. I was hoping we could have a conversation." Maya's key was already in the lock, but she didn't turn it. "I don't know you." "No, but I know you. Former Navy, Special Operations background, currently working private security downtown. Living alone, no family in the area, limited social connections." Each fact was delivered calmly, almost gently, but the message was clear. David Reeves knew far more about Maya than someone should know unless they had access to resources and information networks that went beyond casual street-level intelligence gathering. "What do you want?" Maya asked. "To offer you an opportunity. Something that would make better use of your particular skills and provide significantly better compensation than checking badge access logs." Maya turned to face him fully. David Reeves looked expensive, from his tailored jacket to his Italian leather shoes. Whatever he was selling, it paid well enough to afford quality. "I'm not interested in private military contracts," Maya said. Reeves smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "This isn't about overseas work. This is domestic, corporate security for clients who need a higher level of protection than traditional services provide. Think Fortune 500 executives, tech entrepreneurs, people who've received credible threats. There are plenty of qualified people doing that work already. Not with your background. Most corporate security comes from law enforcement or conventional military. They are trained for confrontation and de-escalation. You're trained for situations where those approaches have already failed." Maya finished unlocking her door but didn't open it. "And you know this how?" "Because I'm very good at finding people with specific skill sets. And because certain mutual acquaintances have vouched for your capabilities." The mutual acquaintances were almost certainly from Maya's military service, people who knew what she was capable of and had somehow connected her to David Reeves. The Special Operations community was small and tightly networked, even after people left active duty. "I'm not looking for that kind of work," Maya said. "I understand the desire for a quiet life," Reeves replied. "But your current situation isn't sustainable. $18 an hour doesn't provide much buffer for emergencies or unexpected expenses. And this neighborhood isn't going to let you stay invisible much longer." The implied threat was delivered so smoothly that it almost sounded like friendly concern. But Maya recognized the technique, the way information was being used as leverage to create pressure for a decision she didn't want to make. "My finances are my business," she said. "Of course. I'm simply pointing out that quality of life is relative. You've gone from being one of the most highly trained professionals in the world to checking badge access logs for barely above minimum wage. That has to feel like a significant step backward." Maya opened her door but stood in the doorway, blocking entry to her apartment. "What exactly are you offering?" "Consultation work initially. Risk assessment for high-value clients, security planning for specific events, occasionally providing close protection services. Nothing that would require you to compromise your principles, but work that would actually challenge your abilities." "And if I say no?" Reeves' expression didn't change, but something shifted in his tone. "Then, you continue your current path. Night security, walking home alone through neighborhoods where your previous demonstration of capabilities has attracted unwanted attention from local entrepreneurs who don't respect the word no. Maya understood now. The text messages, the escalating pressure, even this conversation were all part of a carefully orchestrated recruitment strategy. Create a problem, then offer a solution that required accepting Reeves' job offer. You're behind the harassment, Maya said. I'm offering you a way out of a situation that was going to develop whether I was involved or not. Your skills were always going to attract attention in a neighborhood like this. I'm simply providing an alternative to less pleasant possibilities. Maya studied David Reeves carefully. He had the kind of confidence that came from always being several steps ahead of everyone around him. Whatever organization he represented had resources and reach that extended far beyond simple corporate security. I need time to think about it, Maya said. Of course. But don't take too long. The local interest in your capabilities is growing, and I might not be able to provide the same level of protection if you wait too long to decide. Reeves handed Maya a business card, plain white with only a phone number. When you're ready to discuss details, call that number. Someone will answer, day or night. He walked away without waiting for a response, moving with the kind of purposeful stride that suggested military training of his own. Maya watched until he disappeared into the stairwell, then quickly entered her apartment and locked the door behind her. Inside, Maya sat at her small table and stared at the business card. No company name, no address, nothing that would reveal the nature of the organization that employed David Reeves. Professional-grade operational security, the kind used by people who understood that information was the most dangerous weapon of all. Maya's phone buzzed with another text message, but this one was different. Offer expires Monday. Choose wisely. She turned off the phone and made coffee, thinking through her options. David Reeves had been right about one thing: her current situation wasn't sustainable. $18 an hour wasn't enough to move to a better neighborhood, and staying where she was meant dealing with increasing pressure from people who saw her demonstrated capabilities as either a threat to be eliminated or a resource to be exploited. But accepting Reeves' offer meant returning to the world she had tried so hard to leave behind. It meant using skills that came with a psychological and emotional cost, even when applied to legitimate purposes. Maya looked at the photo on her wall, at the faces of her teammates who had paid the ultimate price for their service. They had died protecting people who would never know their names or understand their sacrifice. She had survived, but survival came with the responsibility to make their sacrifice mean something. Working corporate security for wealthy executives wasn't the same as protecting democracy and freedom, but it was legitimate work that used her training for protective rather than destructive purposes. And, if she was honest with herself, checking badge access logs wasn't exactly a meaningful way to honor her teammates' memory either. The real question was whether she could trust David Reeves and his organization to respect the boundaries she would need to establish. Whether they would be satisfied with her protective capabilities or would eventually pressure her to cross lines she had sworn never to cross again. Maya finished her coffee and tried to sleep, but her mind kept returning to the decision she would have to make. Monday was 3 days away, which meant 3 days to decide whether to embrace the skills that had defined her military career or continue trying to bury them under the routine of civilian employment. Outside her window, the city went about its business, unaware that someone who had spent years protecting national security was currently unemployed and living paycheck to paycheck in a studio apartment. The disconnect between her past and present felt almost surreal sometimes. Maya spent the weekend researching David Reeves, though she knew she wouldn't find much through conventional channels. People like him didn't maintain visible online profiles or leave digital footprints that could be traced by amateur investigators. But Maya's research skills went beyond Google searches and social media profiles. She used techniques learned during intelligence-gathering operations, looking for patterns and connections that revealed more than obvious biographical information. A reverse search on the phone number from his business card traced to a telecommunications company that specialized in encrypted communications for government contractors. The type of service used by organizations that needed to maintain operational security. Maya also reached out to 3 former teammates who now worked in private security, carefully probing for information about high-end corporate protection services. What she learned confirmed her suspicions. There was indeed a tier of security work that operated above conventional bodyguard services, providing protection for clients who faced threats beyond normal criminal activity. Corporate executives who had received kidnapping threats from organized crime groups. Tech entrepreneurs whose innovations had attracted attention from foreign intelligence services. Whistleblowers whose testimony had put powerful people at risk of prosecution. The kind of work that required skills and clearance levels that most security professionals simply didn't possess. By Monday morning, Maya had made her decision. She called the number on David Reeves' business card at exactly 8 o'clock, before heading to her shift at Titan Security. The phone was answered on the first ring by a professional-sounding woman who seemed to be expecting the call. "Mr. Reeves is available to meet with you this afternoon," the woman said after Maya identified herself. 2 o'clock at the Fairmorn Hotel downtown, Suite 2847. "Come alone and tell no one about the meeting." Maya spent her security shift that day thinking through questions and concerns she wanted to raise with Reeves. The work itself was exactly as he had described, consultation and protection services for clients who needed capabilities beyond conventional security. But Maya needed to understand the organization behind the work, the legal framework they operated under, and the types of situations she might be asked to handle. The Fairmorn Hotel was the kind of place where wealthy business travelers stayed when expense accounts weren't a concern. Maya rode the elevator to the 28th floor, noting automatically the security cameras and emergency exits that would matter if the situation went wrong. Suite 2847 was answered by the same woman who had taken Maya's phone call, a sharp-eyed blonde in her 40s who introduced herself simply as Sarah. The suite's main room had been set up as a temporary office, with laptops, secure phones, and documents that were quickly moved out of sight when Maya entered. David Reeves emerged from an adjoining room, looking exactly as professional and expensive as he had outside Maya's apartment. But here, in what was obviously his element, he carried himself with an authority that suggested significant responsibility within whatever organization employed him. "Maya," he said, gesturing toward a chair near the window. "Thank you for coming. I hope you've had time to consider our conversation." "I have questions," Maya said, remaining standing. "Of course. Please, ask whatever you need to know." Maya had prepared a list, but the most important questions came first. Who do you work for? What kind of organization has the resources to conduct background investigations on former special operations personnel and orchestrate recruitment campaigns? Reeves smiled, apparently pleased by the directness of the questions. "We're a private security consultancy that contracts with government agencies and major corporations. Think of us as the bridge between official intelligence services and private sector security needs. We handle situations that are too sensitive for conventional law enforcement but don't rise to the level of national security concerns." That's not really an answer. It's the answer I can provide at this stage of our relationship. Full disclosure comes after you've signed contracts and completed security clearance updates. Maya nodded. She had expected that response and understood the operational security concerns behind it. What types of situations would I be asked to handle? Risk assessment for executives traveling to regions with elevated threat levels. Close protection during corporate events where conventional security might be inadequate. Occasionally, more complex situations that require specialized training to resolve safely. Define complex. Reeves leaned back in his chair, studying Maya carefully. Hostage rescue. Extraction of personnel from hostile environments. Counterintelligence operations when corporate espionage crosses into physical threat territory. Maya felt something shift inside her chest, recognition of the work she had been trained for and had missed more than she wanted to admit. And the legal framework for this work. Everything we do operates within federal law enforcement guidelines. We coordinate with FBI and other agencies when our operations intersect with official investigations. Think of us as very expensive, very discreet consultants with unusual specializations. Sarah handed Maya a folder containing what appeared to be standard employment contracts and security agreements. Maya scanned the documents quickly, noting compensation figures that were 3 times what she was currently making at Titan Security. The money's good, Maya observed. The work justifies the compensation. And, frankly, people with your background are rare enough that market forces drive salaries higher. Maya set the contracts aside without signing them. I need guarantees. Such as? No wet work. No operations that involve eliminating targets rather than protecting clients. No assignments that would require me to violate the laws I swore to protect. Reeves nodded as if he had expected this requirement. Understood and agreed. Our business model is built on protection and prevention, not elimination. Dead bodies attract attention and investigations that are bad for business. I also need the right to refuse assignments that conflict with my personal principles. Within reason, yes. Though I should point out that client protection sometimes requires difficult decisions in fluid situations. Maya understood what he meant. Protecting innocent people sometimes required using force against those who threatened them. But there was a difference between defensive action and offensive operations, and Maya needed to maintain that distinction. I want a trial period, Maya said. 3 months to see if this work suits me. If either side isn't satisfied, we part ways with no hard feelings. Agreed. Though I should mention that once you read into our operations, certain confidentiality agreements become permanent. Maya expected that as well. The kind of work Reeves described would involve access to sensitive information about clients and methods that couldn't be shared publicly even after employment ended. When would I start? Immediately, if you're willing. We have a client situation developing that could benefit from your particular expertise. Sarah handed Maya another folder, this one containing what appeared to be a client briefing. Maya opened it and found photographs and biographical information for Dr. Jennifer Martinez, a pharmaceutical researcher whose work on infectious disease treatments had made her a target for both corporate espionage and more direct threats. Dr. Martinez received a credible kidnapping threat 3 days ago, Reeves explained. She's scheduled to present research findings at a medical conference next week, and our intelligence suggests the threat is serious enough to require specialized protection. Maya studied the photographs and threat assessment. Dr. Martinez was in her 50s, a brilliant scientist whose research could potentially save millions of lives if it reached the right people. But that same research made her valuable to organizations that would use it for profit rather than public benefit. What kind of threat assessment are we talking about? Maya asked. Professional level. The surveillance photos show at least 3 individuals with military or law enforcement training. They've conducted reconnaissance of Dr. Martinez's home and workplace, and intercepted communications suggest they are planning to move during the medical conference. Maya felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came with mission briefings. The combination of anticipation and focus that had carried her through dozens of operations where failure meant people died. This was exactly the kind of work she had been trained for, protecting someone who couldn't protect herself from people who posed a genuine threat. What would my role be? Close protection during the conference, coordination with local law enforcement, and extraction planning if the situation deteriorates. Dr. Martinez is brilliant but has no security training. She needs someone who can keep her safe while allowing her to complete her presentation. Maya looked at the contracts again, then at the mission briefing. Everything about the situation felt familiar, like stepping back into a role she had never really stopped playing even while checking badge access logs at the Meridian office complex. If I sign these contracts, I leave Titan Security immediately. We'll handle that transition. Tom Morrison is actually a former client who understands our work. He'll provide positive references if you need them for future opportunities. The revelation that Morrison knew about Reeves' organization suggested a level of integration with legitimate security services that made Maya more comfortable with the decision. Tom Morrison had struck her as someone who operated within legal and ethical boundaries, and his implicit endorsement carried weight. Maya picked up a pen and signed the contracts, feeling something settle into place inside her chest. For the first time in months, she was going to do work that actually mattered, using skills that had cost years of her life to develop. "Welcome to the team," Reeves said, shaking her hand. Dr. March 6 months after signing with David Reeves' organization, Maya Chen stood in the bathroom of a luxury hotel in San Francisco, adjusting the concealed body armor beneath her tailored business suit. Dr. Martinez's presentation had gone perfectly, the pharmaceutical conference had concluded without incident, and the kidnapping threat had been neutralized through careful coordination with federal law enforcement. But tonight's assignment was different. Tonight, Maya was protecting Elena Volkov, the daughter of a Russian oligarch who had decided to testify against her father's criminal organization. Elena had asked for American protection in exchange for information that could dismantle money laundering operations worth billions of dollars. Maya checked her earpiece and confirmed positions with the rest of her team. 3 other operatives, all with military special operations backgrounds, covering different sectors of the hotel and surrounding area. Sarah coordinated from a mobile command post 2 blocks away, monitoring communications and law enforcement frequencies. Elena Volkov was 28 years old, a former competitive swimmer who had discovered that her family's wealth came from activities that had destroyed countless lives. Her decision to cooperate with federal prosecutors required courage that Maya deeply respected, even as it created security challenges that tested every aspect of her training. "Maya," Elena said from the bedroom of the suite, "are you certain they cannot reach me here?" Elena's English was perfect, but her Russian accent became more pronounced when she was nervous. Maya had been protecting her for 3 weeks now, and had learned to read the subtle signs that indicated when Elena's carefully maintained composure was beginning to crack. "They'd have to go through me first," Maya said simply, meaning every word. The truth was that Elena's father commanded resources and personnel that made him one of the most dangerous men in the world. Arkady Volkov had survived the collapse of the Soviet Union, the chaos of the 1990s, and 20 years of Vladimir Putin's increasingly authoritarian rule. He hadn't done so by accepting betrayal from family members without consequences. But Maya had faced dangerous men before, and she had never lost a client under her protection. Elena joined Maya in the main room of the suite, wearing the kind of understated elegant clothing that cost more than most people made in a month. But her hands were shaking slightly, and Maya could see the exhaustion that came from weeks of constant fear. "Tomorrow I testify," Elena said, settling into a chair near the window. "After that, perhaps I can begin to sleep normally again." Maya didn't point out that Elena's security concerns wouldn't end with her testimony. If anything, they would intensify once Arkady Volkov understood the full scope of what his daughter was revealing to federal prosecutors. But Elena knew that already, which was why she had requested long-term protection rather than temporary security during the legal proceedings. "Have you given more thought to the relocation options?" Maya asked. Elena nodded toward a folder on the coffee table. "New Zealand seems most appealing. Far from my father's influence, and a government that takes witness protection seriously." Maya had reviewed the same relocation proposals and agreed with Elena's assessment. New Zealand offered geographic isolation, strong legal protections, and a cultural environment where Elena could rebuild her life without constantly looking over her shoulder. But getting from San Francisco to Auckland alive was going to require every bit of skill and planning that Maya and her team could provide. Maya's earpiece crackled with David Reeves' voice. "Maya, we have movement on the street level. 2 vehicles that weren't there 30 minutes ago, occupants unknown." Maya moved to the window and used binoculars to scan the street below. 2 black SUVs parked in positions that provided clear sight lines to the hotel's main entrance and parking garage. Professional-grade surveillance, the kind that preceded either attempted kidnapping or elimination. "Elena," Maya said calmly, "we need to move to the safe room." The hotel suite included a reinforced interior room that could serve as a temporary safe house if the situation deteriorated. Maya had insisted on the modification as part of Elena's security arrangements, and now it looked like they might need to use it. Elena gathered her essential documents and followed Maya into the safe room without argument. 3 weeks of protection had taught her to trust Maya's judgment completely, even when the immediate threat wasn't obvious. Maya's radio crackled again, this time with Sarah's voice from the command post. "Federal surveillance teams report additional vehicles arriving." This looks like a coordinated operation. Through the safe room's reinforced window, Maya could see more vehicles taking positions around the hotel. At least 12 people, probably more, all moving with the kind of coordination that suggested military or intelligence training. How many? Elena asked quietly. Enough to be problematic, Maya admitted. But not enough to be insurmountable. Maya contacted David Reeves directly, bypassing the normal communication protocols. We need immediate federal backup and helicopter extraction from the hotel roof. FBI tactical teams are en route, Reeves replied. Helicopter will be there in 15 minutes. Can you hold position until then? Maya assessed their tactical situation quickly. The safe room could withstand small arms fire and explosive charges for approximately 20 minutes. Her team had defensive positions throughout the building, and federal law enforcement was responding. The numbers weren't ideal, but they weren't impossible either. We can hold, Maya confirmed. Elena sat in the reinforced chair that Maya had positioned away from windows and potential firing lines. Despite her obvious fear, she maintained the dignity and composure that had impressed Maya from their first meeting. My father always said that family loyalty was more important than law or morality, Elena said quietly. I used to believe him. Maya checked her weapons and communication equipment, preparing for what might be a prolonged defensive action. What changed your mind? I met families whose children died from drugs that my father helped smuggle. I saw communities destroyed by money laundering that financed human trafficking. I realized that family loyalty means nothing if your family causes that much suffering. The first explosion came from the hotel's parking garage, controlled detonation designed to disable backup power and emergency systems. Maya felt the building shake and heard glass breaking in adjacent rooms. There inside the building, Sarah reported through the radio. Federal teams are still 3 minutes away. Maya activated the emergency beacon that would summon all available law enforcement and federal resources to their location. Elena's testimony was crucial to multiple ongoing investigations, and the government had invested significant resources in keeping her alive. Elena, Maya said, handing her a pistol and spare ammunition, do you know how to use this? Elena examined the weapon with surprising familiarity. My father insisted that all family members learn to shoot. He said it was necessary for survival in our world. Maya wasn't surprised that Arkady Volkov had trained his daughter in firearms. Men like him understood that wealth and power attracted enemies, and that family members needed to be able to protect themselves when bodyguards weren't enough. The sound of gunfire echoed through the hotel corridors, getting closer with each exchange. Maya's team was fighting a running battle through the building, trying to buy time for federal reinforcements to arrive. Maya, came the voice of Jake Morrison, one of her team members, through the radio. They have professional equipment and training. This isn't amateur hour. Maya had expected as much. Arkady Volkov wouldn't send street criminals to eliminate his daughter. He would send former Spetsnaz operatives or other military professionals, people with the skills and experience to overcome serious resistance. But Maya had faced Spetsnaz operatives before, during classified missions that would never appear in any official records. She knew their training methods, their tactical preferences, and their psychological approach to combat operations. The helicopter appeared outside the safe room's window, a federal law enforcement aircraft designed for tactical extractions from hostile environments. Maya could see FBI tactical officers rappelling onto the hotel's roof, establishing a perimeter around the landing zone. Time to go, Maya said, helping Elena gather her documents and evidence materials. They moved quickly through the hotel suite toward the roof access stairs, Maya leading with her weapon ready and Elena staying close behind. The sounds of combat were getting closer, but Maya's team was maintaining their defensive positions long enough for the extraction to proceed. On the roof, FBI tactical officers provided covering fire while Maya and Elena approached the helicopter. The pilot was a veteran of military special operations, someone Maya recognized from previous joint operations between federal agencies and private security contractors. As they lifted off, Maya could see Arkady Volkov's operatives retreating from the hotel. They had failed in their primary mission, but they had demonstrated capabilities that made Elena's long-term security significantly more complicated. Where now? Elena asked through the helicopter's communication system. Safe house for tonight, Maya replied. New Zealand tomorrow, if federal prosecutors agree you've provided enough testimony. Elena nodded, looking down at the city lights below. I will never see my family again, she said quietly. Maya understood that Elena was grieving for the life she was leaving behind, even as she chose a different path forward. Family connections were powerful, even when family members were criminals who posed threats to your survival. You're saving lives, Maya said. That matters more than family loyalty. Elena smiled sadly. You sound like someone who has made similar choices. Maya thought about her teammates' faces in the photograph on her apartment wall, about the decisions that had led her from Navy SEAL operations to protecting a Russian oligarch's daughter in a helicopter above San Francisco. We all make choices about what kind of person we want to be, Maya said. The hard part is living with the consequences. 3 hours later, Maya stood in the secure briefing room at a federal facility outside the city, providing detailed reports on the evening's events to FBI supervisors and federal prosecutors. Elena was in protective custody, preparing for her final testimony sessions before relocation to New Zealand. David Reeves appeared in the briefing room as Maya finished her reports, carrying the kind of satisfied expression that suggested successful mission completion and satisfied clients. Outstanding work, he said simply. Elena's testimony is going to destroy one of the largest criminal organizations in the world. Maya nodded, feeling the familiar mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction that came after high-stakes operations. The work was dangerous and psychologically demanding, but it served a purpose that made the risks worthwhile. What's next? Maya asked. Reeves handed her a new mission briefing folder. Tech entrepreneur in Seattle. Developed encryption technology that certain foreign governments want to acquire through non-voluntary means. Maya opened the folder and scanned the threat assessment. Another client who needed protection, another situation where her skills could make the difference between life and death. Another opportunity to honor the memory of teammates who had died protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. When do I start? Maya asked. Tomorrow morning. Flight leaves at 7. Maya left the federal facility and took a taxi back to her apartment, which she had kept despite rarely spending time there anymore. The studio looked smaller than she remembered, and the photograph on the wall seemed to watch her with expressions that had become familiar companions. 8 faces, 5 of them gone forever, 3 of them still serving in various capacities around the world. Maya had found her own way of continuing to serve, protecting people whose work made the world safer and better. She made coffee and sat at her small table, thinking about Elena Volkov's courage in choosing justice over family loyalty. About Dr. Martinez's dedication to saving lives through medical research. About the tech entrepreneur in Seattle who had developed tools that could protect privacy and freedom in an increasingly connected world. Maya Chen had spent months trying to disappear into civilian life, trying to bury the skills and instincts that had defined her military service. But she had learned that those skills were part of who she was, not something to be hidden or ignored. Now she used those skills to protect people whose work made the world better, whose courage and dedication deserved protection from those who would exploit or eliminate them. It wasn't the same as serving her country in uniform, but it was service nonetheless. Maya finished her coffee and began packing for Seattle, preparing for another mission in the ongoing battle between those who would harm innocents and those who stood in their way. The photograph watched over her as she worked, 8 faces that had taught her what service really meant and why it mattered. Maya Chen was exactly where she belonged, doing exactly what she had been trained to do. And, tomorrow, she would do it again. Inez's protection detail begins tomorrow morning. Sarah will provide you with equipment and briefing materials tonight. As Maya left the hotel suite, she realized she felt more like herself than she had since leaving the Navy. The work ahead would be dangerous and challenging, but it was work that served a purpose beyond simple employment. Work that honored the memory of teammates who had died protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. Maya's phone buzzed with a text message, but this one was from Sarah providing an address for equipment pickup and briefing schedules. The anonymous threatening messages had stopped completely, apparently no longer necessary now that their intended result had been achieved. Walking through downtown toward the bus stop, Maya noticed details that had been invisible when she was just another civilian going about ordinary business. Escape routes, potential ambush points, individuals whose behavior patterns suggested surveillance or reconnaissance activities. She was a Navy SEAL again, even if her uniform now consisted of civilian clothes, and her mission involved protecting a pharmaceutical researcher instead of eliminating enemy combatants. But the core purpose remained the same, using specialized training to keep innocent people safe from those who would harm them. Maya Chen was back where she belonged, doing work that mattered. And, for the first time since leaving the military, that felt like coming home. But, maybe, Maya thought as she finally drifted off to sleep, it was time to stop trying so hard to be someone she wasn't. Maybe the real question wasn't whether she could afford to accept David Reeves' offer, but whether she could afford not to. Her teammates' faces watched over her as she slept, their expressions frozen in the confident determination that had carried them through missions where failure wasn't an option. When Maya woke up Monday morning, she would have to decide whether to honor their memory through continued service or through the pursuit of a normal life they had died protecting. Either choice carried its own risks and rewards. But Maya Chen had never been afraid of difficult decisions, especially when they involved protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. The business card sat on her table, white and unremarkable, but representing a doorway back into a world where her skills would matter again. Where she could be the person she had been trained to be, instead of a shadow of that person trying to fit into a life that had never really suited her anyway. Monday couldn't come fast enough. Ion escalated, she would need to be ready. Not as Maya Chen, the struggling veteran looking for work, but as the person she had been trained to be when normal rules no longer applied. Outside her window, the sun set over a city that had no idea one of its most dangerous residents was currently eating rice and beans in a studio apartment, worrying about whether her new security job would provide enough hours to cover next month's rent. Maya finished her dinner and began her evening routine of checking locks and escape routes. Old habits from a life that officially no longer existed, but continued to shape everything she did. Monday couldn't come soon enough. Maya was ready to be a security guard, to have a normal job with normal responsibilities. But if the neighborhood wouldn't let her be normal, she was prepared for that too. The question was whether anyone else was prepared for what that might mean. But invisibility came with its own price. When people couldn't see you as a person, they saw you as a victim instead. Maya finished her dinner and washed her single bowl and spoon in the tiny sink. Outside her window, the city continued its nightly routine of sirens and traffic and the distant sound of music from someone's radio. Normal sounds of normal life, the kind she had fought to preserve in places most people would never know about. She pulled out her phone and stared at the number for her VA counselor. Dr. Martinez had said to call anytime, day or night, if she needed someone to talk to. But how do you explain that you've spent the day being invisible until the moment you had no choice but to be seen? How do you tell someone that the very skills that saved your life overseas now made it harder to live the normal life you fought to protect? Maya put the phone away without making the call. Tomorrow she would go back to the grocery store, and people would see what they wanted to see. A quiet woman buying rice and beans, someone to be overlooked or dismissed. And maybe that was okay, as long as she remembered who she really was underneath the camouflage of ordinary life. The photo on the wall seemed to watch her as she prepared for bed. 8 faces, 5 of them gone forever. They had died so that people could live normal lives, could go to grocery stores and walk home safely and never have to think about the things that happened in dark places far from home. Maya Chen had been one of the best at what she did. And maybe, she thought as she drifted off to sleep, that was something worth remembering, even if no one else could see it.